Welcome back, gentlemen. There have been some big offseason additions. We're going to figure out how much it actually means now. We'll go through some of the biggest additions and figure out, does it move the needle? Has it truly changed the way you see a team's fortunes for this year? And let's start with somebody that I've already said enough about on the show, but I'll get y'all's thoughts. Aaron Rodgers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. C-Rob, does that move the needle? Does that suddenly take Pittsburgh and put them over the top to you?
Like, if it's healthy Aaron Rodgers, if it's a guy who did look healthier the second half of the 2024 season with the New York Jets, um, I would say yes. I think it is an upgrade over Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, right? Like, I think at least at the very least, the uncertainty's gone, right? Because we sat there and stared at that team last year when Justin Fields was winning games, and we're like, okay, but they're not closing the door on Russ. Mike Tomlin seems to be leaving the door cracked on. As soon as Russ is healthy, he's going to end up being their starter. And I think that hurt the Steelers, knowing that you're still in this situation where you're juggling quarterbacks and offensive coordinator, like who did Arthur Smith want to coach? I think Arthur Smith wants to coach Aaron Rodgers. It lays everything to rest in terms of if there's a question or not. There's not. They got their guy. If for a season, they're going to figure out if this ultimately works. So I do think it moves the needle in terms of certainty inside the franchise. There's no more questions. Either he works or he doesn't, but he's not going anywhere. You have your quarterback. And I think that at the very least, it gives the Steelers a chance to put their best foot forward come training camp.
I'll say no, because I'm going to throw out this stat. I found not
stats.
that I hadn't
not that I hadn't
stats
known
and research. Not that I hadn't known it, but when I was writing the Steelers preview, I researched it again. I'm going to give you there's been 4 instances in NFL history of quarterbacks 42 years old or more throwing 100 passes in a season and putting up a rating of over 76.6, which is really bad, right? 76.6 is terrible. These are the 4 instances in NFL history of that happening. 2019 Tom Brady, 2020 Tom Brady, 2021 Tom Brady, and 2022 Tom Brady. Okay, maybe one guy was the outlier. Maybe just one guy can do this. And we're asking Aaron Rodgers to be basically the second 42-year-old quarterback in 105 seasons of NFL history to do this. I don't know that that's really feasible. I will say this, though. I don't think Brett Favre could do it with the Vikings. And there's been so many parallels, obviously, between Rodgers and Favre. Everybody thought Favre was just going to Minnesota. He's going to be Willie Mays with the Mets, right? And he had probably the best season of his career and almost took the Vikings to the Super Bowl. Some guys just break the mold, right? Some guys do break the rules. And somebody did ask me, like, what's the Steelers' upside with Aaron Rodgers? And it sounds like, you think about it, you're like, it's not very high. But then you think, well, this team went 10-7 last year at Russell Wilson. Is Aaron Rodgers really going to be worse than Russell Wilson was last year? Probably not. So I assume you have to say the upside's higher than 10 wins. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that age curve at quarterback is real. Every other quarterback other than Tom Brady in NFL history, going back to 1920, has been either washed or retired. And I don't know that I'm willing to bet on Aaron Rodgers being the second dude. So I will say no. I don't think this works out really well for the Steelers. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine. I think the Steelers are going to be fine. And then we're going to get to the end of the day and say, was this all really worth it? All this hype, all these headlines, all the weight, was it really worth it to go 8-1? I don't know. Maybe.
Really? You think 8-1? So you're sitting there and you're telling me, okay, they're 10-7 with Russell Wilson. You think Aaron Rodgers is probably a little bit better than that. So you don't see 11-6. Instead, you see him regressing in terms of the wins and losses.
I do. Just because, you go year to year, not everything's the same. The division's really tough. I just don't see the Steelers. I don't see the Steelers falling off. A lot of people are like, oh, the Steelers are really going to be terrible. They're not. They're never terrible. They're a good football team.
I'll say this about the whole schedule thing.
They got a lot of aging guys on defense, too. I mean, there's a lot of age questions with the Steelers now.
We sit in June and July and talk about how tough schedules look. And then all of a sudden, like late October, we're like, oh, God, all these teams that we thought are going to be great are terrible. And this schedule actually wasn't tough.
It's easier to project. It's easier to project easy schedules and tough schedules. I could tell you, like, this looks like this schedule is really going to be easy. That's sticky because we're pretty good at predicting which teams are going to be terrible, but we're not as good as predicting which teams are going to be great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we're on record from when we talked about the Steelers a few weeks ago. I think Pittsburgh starts hot and then ends really cold. So I'm with Frank on this one. I don't think it actually ends up moving the needle at all for Pittsburgh. But maybe that's look, it moves the needle in the sense of this, good or bad, we're going to talk about it. So that ultimately is the best part about it. Like if this thing implodes, it'll be a conversation every week. If it's glorious, it'll be a conversation every week. So, either way, it moves the needle. We'll talk about it, but I just don't think it gets Pittsburgh over the top. What about George Pickens to Dallas? See, Rob, now Dallas gets a second wide receiver. Pickens leaves Pittsburgh to become Dallas's other guy. Is that moving the needle for you?
I don't think it moves the needle, only from the standpoint that the talent to me moves the needle. There's no question about that. I just don't. There's a reason why Pittsburgh moved off of George Pickens. There's a reason why they thought about moving off of George Pickens for 2 off seasons in a row. And I think you put that in the mix with Dallas, where, I mean, not that there's not a focal point in Pittsburgh, but it is different in Dallas. Like, especially if you produce or don't produce, especially if you say things in the locker room or don't say things in the locker room after games. I just don't see how he's not a distraction in Dallas. He was a distraction in Pittsburgh. He was a problem inside Pittsburgh's building, right? And there were issues between George Pickens and his quarterbacks in Pittsburgh. You're going to tell me that he's going to walk into Dallas and it's just going to be perfect? So I think it moves the needle, but in the wrong direction. I just don't see it being this smooth sailing experience, because it wasn't in Pittsburgh, and Dallas is a much more, I think, intense spotlight, and the criticism and the microscope on how you play and what you do and what you say. And did you alligator arm this ball, or, are you laying out for that one? What was remember the whole CeeDee Lamb? Oh, look at his body language toward Dak. What did he say to Dak? We spent like a week trying to do lip reading to figure out what CeeDee Lamb said to Dak Prescott at one point last season. And to me, this is way worse. And oh, by the way, what's his chemistry like with CeeDee Lamb? It's not just Dak. It's his chemistry with the other wideouts in that room as well. And I don't even know if he and CeeDee Lamb will work. I think it doesn't move the needle in terms of this just being an automatic win for the Cowboys, and this puts them over the top. I don't think so.
The one thing that eliminates a lot of the controversies and the distractions is production. I think George Pickens is going to be really, really good in Dallas. I do. I think it moves the needle for them positively. And I get it. George Pickens has been a problem his entire career. I also, at some point, you have to have enough self-awareness or somebody in your ear to say, George, shut up for 1 year. 1 year. Just give me the quietest year of your life. Don't rock any boats. Don't have bad body language. Go celebrate with your teammates when they score touchdowns. Don't complain about the ball. Don't get in fights when Dak Prescott's throwing a Hail Mary like he did for Russell Wilson last year in Cleveland. Just one good year, and you're going to get like $30 million a year. Just one good year. That's it. If his agent's not telling him that, and if George Pickens has to listen, that's the whole thing. George Pickens has to listen to this, because I do think he is set up so well to be productive in Dallas. If you think about the way the Cowboys offense is built, maybe, but at some point maybe it sinks in. I get it. This might not. He just might be that dude. He might be that dude that's just never going to grow up. I get that. But the gamble's worth it, I think.
Frank, if somebody had told him that prior to 2024, he would have, and he followed through on it, he would have gotten an extension. He'd be in Pittsburgh right now. He would have gotten that money. So it's not like his agent wasn't telling him, hey, it's 2024, man. Like we're talking, we're lining up for the extension now. So let's put it all together here.
I do get it.
Instead he gets traded.
Doesn't that have to be a wake-up call? I don't know. Maybe I'm wish casting this, because I do think, just football-wise, this is a perfect fit. You think about Dallas's offense, they, for all of Brian Schottenheimer's past, they can't run the ball. They have just old, kind of dusty veterans at running back. I don't think Javonte Williams is going to be some 1,500-yard back.
The need is there.
They got to pass the ball.
Yeah,
they have to pass the ball. I can see George Pickens having a 1,300 yards type of season. I really can. And I don't know. Yes, I don't know if he could be good in the locker room. I just don't. And that's why Pittsburgh gave up on him. That's why they basically said, we'll overpay for DK Metcalf just so we can get rid of George Pickens.
Frank, you never heard me question the production. It wasn't about the production for me. It's about everything else that got him dealt. He produced in Pittsburgh, and he still got dealt. So it's not about the talent. It's not about the production. It's about everything else that comes along with it. That to me is what is negative.
But if he does hit this Dallas team, I think this Dallas team is really under the radar because they're Dallas and everybody likes to dunk on them and, oh, they stink. This Dallas team did win 12 games 3 straight years. Yes, last year was down, but they were actually competitive. Everybody thought Dallas was just in for some 3-14 type of season after their start and after Dak got hurt, and they were actually pretty competitive down the stretch with Cooper Rush. Now you get Dak back. I don't know if Brian Schottenheimer could coach, but I think Dallas could be good. I don't know if they're going to beat Philly for the division or anything, but I think Dallas could be good, and I think Pickens can be a big. I like the gamble. Let's put it that way. I don't think the Cowboys gave up too much to find out about George Pickens.
I like the gamble, but I think, guys, we are underestimating the past of Brian Schottenheimer to me, because I went back and looked at the numbers. Let's take the 2 years with the Cowboys out of the equation because McCarthy called plays both of those years. So if you take the rest of his history as an offensive coordinator, he's only had a top half of the league passing yardage offense for the season twice. And 1 year it was 13th and 1 year it was 15th. So there is just no, I love proof of concept, Frank. There is no proof of concept that Schotty's actually going to call a bunch of throwing the football. Now, they don't have a great running game. I don't think they don't have the running back or the offensive line to maybe do that. But why do we suddenly think that Brian Schottenheimer is going to be different as an offensive coordinator than he's been every time in his career that he's had the opportunity to call plays? That version of Schottenheimer runs the ball and doesn't throw the ball particularly as an offensive sort of emphasis. So I question whether or not Schottenheimer is even going to call the game plan that can get CD and George Pickens fed in a way that suddenly makes this a big needle mover.
I think personnel. I think Schottenheimer has to look at his personnel and be like, are we really going to give Javonte Williams 22 carries today? Are we really going to give Miles Sanders 20? I don't know. I just look at that roster and I'm like, this team is set up to pass it 40 times a game because that's just going to be how they win. And if Schottenheimer can't see that, then that's going to be a problem.
I think it'll come down to whether or not Dak affects it. Given Schotty's background, I get it. It's not like he hasn't worked with veteran quarterbacks before, and we haven't seen the explosive passing offense. But I just don't see how Dak comes back in there and isn't pressing to influence the offense. If you're Dak, I think you got to be saying, look, I want to throw it 40 times a game because that's how we're going to ultimately move. That's how we're going to score points. And I'm not saying Dak doesn't want a running game, but a veteran quarterback at this point in his career, I think he knows how they're set up to win. And as long as they can protect him, I don't think Dak's going to have any problem going out there and throwing, 35 to 40 passes a game. Again, as long as they can protect him. If they can't protect him, that's a whole different animal.
I think they can. I think that offensive line's going to be good enough. I think it'll be good enough to protect him. I just, yes, I do wonder about Schottenheimer getting out of his past. There's no question about that, Fitz. You are right. He has always been that dude, but at some point you got to reinvent yourself a little bit based on your personnel. I think I will see though. And you're right. Maybe the offensive line, very young offensive line, maybe they can't protect. I don't know. But if I'm the Cowboys, I'm like, Dak's going to be our ticket here. We're going to see how much of a workload basically he can handle.
What about Joey Bosa to Buffalo? But we ask the question every year, what does Buffalo need to get through Kansas City? Frank, is Joey Bosa the needle mover that gets them finally over the hump?
No, he can't stay healthy. We've already seen him get hurt. That's the Joey Bosa story, and I hate that. But it is kind of. I think it's a cheaper version of the Von Miller acquisition, where Von just got hurt and was never the same guy, and then was kind of a liability by the end. I don't see Joey Bosa really. I think the Bills are very good. I think they could win a Super Bowl, but I don't think unless they could somehow manage it where Joey Bosa is healthy for 4 weeks in January, then yeah. But I don't really. It's just the proof of concept here, Fitz, is that Joey Bosa gets hurt. That's what he does.
I don't know if he's a top end player that he used to be anymore either. And I think
the injuries probably.
Yeah, I think the injuries probably affect that. But I think there was a reason why they move off him, and it's because they got to the point where they're like, as Frank said, availability is a skill. He's not always available. That's a problem. And when he is available, do we feel like he's showing up 100% against the run, 100%, rushing the passer every single snap? I think the level of play declined to the point where the Chargers are like, we can't continue to justify paying him this money. He's not worth that to us anymore, even when he's on the field. So I think that diminished element of play. Now he's got an opportunity here to turn it around. I just don't know if he really ultimately can. Although I will say, look, when Von Miller went to Buffalo, it was sort of the same situation. It's like, okay, where are we with him now? Can he still be that dynamic pass rusher defender that really can make a difference? And when he arrived in Buffalo, at least initially, he was that. So, Bosa's got a shot. I don't count on it. I don't think it's going to be the needle mover that some might expect.
Yeah, I'm with both of you guys on that one. All right, it's a modern miracle. Rise, repeat, retreat. Actually, we got a good division for C-Rob, the AFC West. We'll do it after we take a quick break.